Okay, cool. It appears that we are live on Facebook today. And welcome to, let me get my microphone here. All right, now we can get going. Welcome to another edition of Wealthy and Wise Wednesdays, where I share a few words of financial wisdom to help put you back in the driver's seat of your financial future. Today is Wednesday, December 2nd, and today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, the financial matrix. Now, I use that phrase in conversations and on a lot of my social media posts, but a lot of people they don't know what it actually means. So what do I mean when I say that? Well, that phrase is obviously a play on words from the popular movie, but the premise is the same. What we're talking about here is a system of control. And when we talk about the financial matrix, we're talking about a system of financial control, a system that's designed and rigged against you, designed to enslave the unsuspecting public while profiting those people in charge. You know, a lot of what I'm about to talk about comes from a book called The Financial Matrix. And in this book, author Orrin Woodward, they've named this rigged system or this rigged game the financial matrix. And they discuss the topic in depth in this book. Now, what does it mean? Well, like the title of this video says, it ensures debt, it ensures stress for the people, and it ensures profits and control for the aristocracy and the elites. And that's what we're talking about here today. But what led me to talk about this today? Well, and I should probably warn you, as I talk about this today, I'm going to get pretty worked up, I think, and probably the ex-professional wrestler in me is going to come out because I'm very worked up about the things that we're going to talk about today, what's going on in society, and also what's going on in the financial world. So what led me to talk about this topic specifically today? Well, if you look at the world around us, we look at politics, we look at the election, we look at the coronavirus, and through many different processes, we hear all sorts of conflicting information about these things. But why is that? Well, number one, the media is complicit in all of this. The media has been weaponized, and the American media today is little more than a propaganda machine. There is one official narrative to promote, and that narrative is controlled by the wealthy elites. It's controlled by the people in charge, and all dissenting voices and dissenting opinions are quashed. And big tech is in bed with it too. They're also censoring anything that doesn't agree with the official narrative. And look at all the confusion surrounding the coronavirus and the science, because there's science and then there's science. Real science follows the data, no matter where the data leads. But science follows the money, no matter where the data leads. And that's why their science keeps changing in order to fit whatever piece of the narrative that they want to push that week. Now, this science, it's infiltrated the mainstream media through blackmail, censorship, bribery, even murder. And when you hear the slogan pro-science, it's really an agenda to suppress information and to suppress dissenting voices. And so when you think that you're listening to the science, you're actually listening to promotional ads by trillion-dollar industries that make up their own science, and that science benefits them, not you. So even with what you see in the political world, with the election, with the coronavirus, it's all about an agenda and it's all about control. So what does any of this have to do with the financial world? Well, are we really so naive to believe that there aren't agendas, narratives, and false information in the financial world, especially with so much money at stake? Because when it comes to financial planning, a lot of people think that it's too complex for them, and they just bury their heads in the sand and just whatever happens is going to happen. Now, thankfully, there are a lot of good financial programs and a lot of good financial advisors out there. And some of those programs and some of those advisors focus primarily on the defensive side of the ball. And that's things like budgeting, getting out of debt, building an emergency fund. And there are some programs and some advisors who focus on the offensive side of the ball, things like investing in real estate or the stock market or saving for retirement, things like that. And there are some programs that even give you a comprehensive plan where it takes the offense and the defense and it combines them into one comprehensive plan. But there are very few, almost none, that actually talk about the playing field or talk about the rules of the money game. And why is that? Because it's a very unpleasant subject. And why is it so unpleasant? Well, quite frankly, it's because the rules of the game have been rigged against you. And people don't like to hear that. It's kind of like the ostrich burying their head in the sand. And if you don't understand the rules of the game, if you don't understand the financial matrix, you'll always come out behind. You'll never get ahead. You'll never have the optimal financial plan. You must understand that this system is rigged against you. And it's not just a matter of the consumer lacking financial education or lacking fiscal responsibility, although that certainly plays a part. What I mean is literally the system itself was built and designed from the very beginning to profit the bankers, the wealthy elites, the politicians, and the other financial institutions at the consumer's expense, at the expense of regular people like you and I. Let me give you an example. When you go and take out a mortgage, banks are allowed to create money and to create mortgage loans right out of thin air. And they do that through the wonderful tool of fractional reserve banking. And when they do this, when they create money out of thin air, people are expected to pay back this money by surrendering a portion of the fruit of their productive labor year in and year out for 30 years. Now, let me give you an example of what that means. Let's say that a bank has $100,000 of cash through the deposits of their customers. They're allowed to take that $100,000 of cash and turn around and actually loan out $1 million for mortgage loans. In essence, creating $900,000 out of thin air through the fractional reserve banking system. And then the consumer is expected to pay that $900,000 of created money back to the bank plus interest on that money that the bank created out of thin air. And of course, mortgage loans are just one of the devices that the banks use to slither its tentacles around a person's pocketbook. Now let's factor in student loans, auto loans, card leases, credit cards, and the various forms of other consumer loans and debt. Do you realize that on average, the amount of money that goes to service debt amounts to over 1/3 of a person's take-home income? And I don't mean paying for the actual object that they bought. I mean 1/3 of their take-home income is just paying the interest on what they've bought. 1/3 of their income. So needless to say, paying 1/3 to the banking institutions or the banking system for the privilege of accessing money that they created out of thin air, that seems like a pretty unfair and unlevel playing field to me. Personal debt, though, that's just one of the banking system's three-pronged approach to bilking society, because the other two have to do with businesses and with governments. Because businesses, they can cover their debt by raising prices, and the governments can cover their debts by raising taxes. Unfortunately, the consumer, regular people like you and I, we foot the bill for both. Now consider this. The US government is over $27 trillion in debt as we speak. And the interest on the national debt is now a top 5 budget item. Just the interest is now a top 5 budget item, coming in at just under $350 billion. Now, the money to pay that interest is siphoned from the productive capacity of every hardworking American citizen by the very banking system that created the money in the first place. And if that's not bad enough, every time the government runs into a crisis, what do? They just turn on the printing presses. QE1, QE2, QE3, QE4, coronavirus relief package, stimulus packages. But every time they print more money, what does it do? It reduces the value of the money already in circulation. So nowadays, the cash that you have stored in the bank, in money markets and CDs, they get such a paltry rate of return, it doesn't even keep pace with inflation. So in essence, you're going broke slowly. And that's why Rich Dad, Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki, he asserts that savers are losers. And that's why. And when money is devalued over and over and over, what does that mean for the integrity of the US dollar? What does that mean for the integrity and the strength of our currency? Well, why do you think cryptocurrencies have become so popular lately? One huge reason is because they're not tampered with and they're not printed at will by the government. Now, I'm no Bitcoin expert, but I do love learning new things. And that's why for next week's Wealthy and Wise Wednesday, I'll be hosting a good friend of mine, Brandon Perry, and he's going to be discussing Bitcoin, and he can drop some knowledge on all of us. But here's the key. The government is tampering with the money supply and with interest rates, and they're causing inflation, and they're going to be raising taxes. So you have to learn ways to store your cash that are going to be safe, but where they can stay ahead of the pace of inflation. Now, let's get back on track here because I kind of did a little aside. In other words, before people are even allowed to enjoy the fruits of their labor, they're forced to service everybody else's debt first. Businesses' debt through rising prices, government's debt through rising taxes, and then their own personal debt. So if 1/3 of a person's income is siphoned off to pay interest on their personal debts, and then another third of their income, or maybe more, is siphoned off to pay the various taxes that exist, and then through money printing, the government defacing the value of the little bit of money that the Americans have left, it's no wonder that the average American citizen is struggling. It's no wonder that the average American citizen can't seem to get ahead. You have been conned. The game is rigged. Indeed, the entire system is rigged. And ignorance of this fact is only going to ensure financial failure in the long run. Now, let's talk about this financial matrix, because unlike earlier versions that were based on force, such as slavery or serfdom, the financial matrix is different because it's a system of control in which people freely elect to choose their own bondage. Unfortunately, a lot of that is due to the widespread lack of financial literacy. It allows the systems to seduce people into making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, and that becomes a negative snowball, right? And I know that I'm getting pretty pessimistic, but pessimism is not the answer. Just like anything else where I coach people, whether it's finances, whether it's health and fitness, business, whatever the case might be, I tell people, and I try to remember this myself, to focus on controlling the controllables. Focus on what you can actually do. Because after all, nobody can control what the governments are going to do or what businesses are going to do. But with financial literacy and a little bit of discipline, everyone can learn how to stop being seduced into debt slavery by the next new shiny object that you see a commercial for on TV. Through financial education, everybody can learn safe places to store their cash that will earn much higher rates of return than parking your money within the banking system. Through financial education, people can learn why contributing anything beyond an employer match into their 401k is a fool's game. You don't believe me? Well, consider this. Tax rates right now are historically low. So why in the world would you take a small deduction on a relatively small amount of money every year and then over time build up this huge pile of money that's never been taxed that the government can go after later? Especially when that same government is already $27 trillion in debt. When that same government is running $1 trillion deficits every year, that same government where their two main programs, Social Security and Medicare, are both on the brink of insolvency. Where are they going to get the money? And if your answer was they're going to get that money from the people who have money, you are right. So why are you building up all of your wealth inside of a 401k? Because would you rather pay the tax on a tiny seed, or would you rather pay your tax on the whole harvest? So why have we been conditioned for the last 40 years by the financial media, by the financial institutions, by Wall Street, and by the government to try to max out your 401k? Is that truly good for you, or is it better for them? Because yeah, when you max out your 401k, you might build this big, large amount that you see on a piece of paper. But what is the after-tax spendable income? Wall Street loves it because they make a ton of fees off it. And the IRS also loves it because when you go to pull money out of your account, they get to hit you with huge taxes and fees. Because you care about after-tax spendable income. But that's not what they're telling you to do. They're telling you to do the exact opposite. You have been conned. Now, we talked about controlling the controllables, so let's get solution focused. Now, one of it has to do with our currency. And like I said, we're going to be talking to Brandon Perry next week about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and some of the, he may even talk about precious metals. I think we're going to be focusing on Bitcoin though, but some of these other things that are actual, like gold and precious metals, actual tangible objects that have inherent value. Okay. But the rigged financial system, that's why I teach financial strategies to help people escape the financial matrix, to help them take back control of their money from these forces who seek to take it from them. And there is one account that I love utilizing and that the wealthy have been using for centuries that allow you to escape the financial matrix and to take back control of your money. In fact, author Patrick Donahoe, in his best-selling book, Heads I Win, Tails You Lose, he refers to this as a wealth maximization account. But funding this one account will help you be more efficient in every single area of your financial plan and help you optimize your investment portfolio as well. This one account allows you to take back control and allows you to grow emergency savings, allows you to get out of debt and stay out of debt. It shows you how to finance large purchases without paying interest to the banks. It helps you to accumulate wealth safely and predictably with no volatility. It also helps to protect you and your family in the event of death or disability. It provides access to capital for investments, and it provides a tax-free retirement off the radar screen of the IRS for income tax purposes. All of these benefits with the same dollar. It is $1 doing the work of many dollars. It is incredible leverage, and it provides maximum efficiency. What am I talking about? I'm talking about a maximum funded cash value life insurance policy. So whether it's Patrick Donahoe calling it a wealth maximization account, or you may have heard it referred to as the LIRP, life insurance retirement plans. Other people refer to it as the infinite banking strategy or cash flow banking. All of these systems really boil down to one thing, which is taking back control of your money from Wall Street and from the banking institutions and putting you back in control. So that kind of wraps this talk up. I know I've been going for probably 15 or 20 minutes. As I said, I was going to get animated and kind of amped up. But if you'd like to learn more about how to escape the financial matrix by building your own personal wealth maximization account, simply drop me a private message or send me an email letting me know that you want to chat. Also, if you're interested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as a way to hedge against all of the manipulations that they're doing with the US dollar, make sure that you tune in next week for my interview with Brandon Perry, 1 p.m. next Wednesday, December 9th. I hope everybody stays healthy and safe during these crazy times. And God bless you on your journey to prosperity and financial freedom. Well, that's my rant. As always, thanks for listening.